The antiseptic burned as it seeped into the open cut on my shoulder. My breath came in short, sharp waves, each one scraping my throat like broken glass. The hospital lights above me glared too white, too clean, like they were trying to bleach away what had happened. My satin gown, the one I had worn to my sister's wedding only hours ago, was now crimson at the chest, the stain spreading like a blooming rose across fabric meant for celebration. A nurse pressed a wad of gauze against my wound. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she murmured. I could barely focus on her face. My ears still rang from the screams, the music that had cut off mid-beat, the crash of glass. Somewhere between the chaos and the silence, I had lost time. "Who did this to you?" the nurse asked softly. My lips trembled, my voice almost gone. "My sister," I whispered. Her pen froze over the chart. "Your sister," I nodded weakly. "She said it was a gift." The words hung in the air like a bad omen, confusing the nurse, but making perfect sense to me. The word gift still echoed in my head, the $2 million check framed in gold, the crowd's applause. My sister's smile stretched too tight like something waiting to snap. I could still smell the champagne, the lilies on the tables, the ocean breeze from the Charleston Bay. All of it had turned metallic when the first drop of blood hit the floor. My hand twitched as the IV line pulled at my skin. I turned my head, and the movement sent a stab of pain down my spine. On the chair beside the hospital bed lay my ruined dress, the fabric stiff where it had dried. A corner of it shimmered faintly under the fluorescent light, like a memory pretending to still be beautiful. The nurse asked if I wanted her to call someone. My throat tightened. Who would she call my parents? The ones who had watched everything and done nothing. The ones who had rushed to hold Samantha while I bled on the marble. "No," I managed to say. "No one's coming." My voice sounded foreign, detached, as if it belonged to another woman entirely. The nurse gave me a long look, a look that said she had seen too many women like me. "Okay," she said quietly. "Then rest. You're safe here." Safe. The word meant nothing. Safety had become a language my family never spoke. I closed my eyes, and the night replayed itself in brutal clarity. The chandelier lights, the applause the moment I said no, and the way Samantha's face twisted as if I'd taken something from her instead of refusing what she was offering. The music had stopped. The crowd had frozen. Then there was her voice, sharp and shaking. "You think you're better than me?" I hadn't even answered before the wine glass hit me, before she lunged, before I felt the cold bite of steel against my skin. Her scream was the last thing I heard before everything went red. Now, in the sterile hum of the ER, it all felt like a hallucination, a nightmare stitched too close to memory. The monitor beeped steadily beside me, a mechanical reminder that I was still here, alive. Barely. A doctor appeared at the curtain clipboard in hand. "Miss Anderson," he said gently, "we'll need to do a scan. It looks like you lost quite a bit of blood." He didn't ask the details. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe the story was already written on my skin. As he stepped away, my phone buzzed on the tray beside me. I reached for it with my good hand. A single message glowed on the cracked screen from my mother. I stared at it for a long time before reading, "Don't talk to anyone about what happened. Your sister isn't well. Please don't make this worse." My vision blurred. The phone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a small, pathetic sound. Not one word asking if I was okay. Not one word of love. Just silence and control, the family's favorite kind of comfort. I turned my face toward the ceiling. The light above me flickered once, then steadied. I exhaled through the pain, through the weight of betrayal, and whispered into the sterile air. They hugged her. The nurse paused mid-step, confused. I closed my eyes. They hugged her while I bled. And then everything went dark again. 12 hours earlier, the Anderson estate glowed like a scene from a southern fairy tale. Lanterns swung from oak branches, their light pooling across white linen tables and champagne glasses. The scent of jasmine and salt water drifted through the air from the bay, blending with laughter that never reached anyone's eyes. Samantha Anderson. My older sister was radiant beneath the chandelier, her hair perfect, her smile precise, her husband, a forgettable accessory in a tailored tuxedo. Every camera turned toward her as if she were the sun. I stood near the back of the ballroom, a pale reflection in a navy dress, my hands folded tight enough to hurt. It had been her day since the moment she was born, and somehow I had never stopped orbiting her. "Grace, my mother," Elaine whispered, touching my arm, her pearls catching the light. "Try to smile, darling. Don't make her nervous." The warning was gentle, but the meaning was not. My father Richard watched from across the room, the kind of man who measured affection in silence and money. He lifted his glass toward me, one of those looks that said, "Behave." The band struck up a slower tune. Then Samantha took the microphone. Her voice, soft and syrupy, carried through the hall. "Before we move on, I have a little surprise," she said. A gesture of gratitude for someone who's always been there for me. She turned toward me, her diamond earrings flashing like tiny knives. "My sister, Grace Anderson." The crowd turned. I felt the air change, cameras lifted. My stomach tightened as a staff member rolled out a velvet-draped easel. When the cloth came down there, it was a gold frame holding a cashier's check for $2 million. Gasps rippled through the room. For my baby sister Samantha continued, who's always worked so hard in that little hospital job of hers. Now she can finally breathe, maybe take a vacation, or buy something beautiful for once. Laughter polite and shallow. I could feel the heat in my face. She said it like charity, like pity wrapped in a ribbon. I saw my mother dab at her eyes, pretending to be touched. My father smiled for the cameras. Everyone clapped. I stood frozen, 100 faces waiting for me to play along. Grace Samantha called, "Come up here." Her voice was sugar, but her eyes dared me. My heels clicked against the marble as I crossed the floor, each step echoing louder than the applause. The microphone trembled slightly in her hand as she held it out. "Say something," she urged, teeth shining. I took the mic. For a heartbeat, I thought about smiling and saying thank you, pretending like always. But something in me snapped, not loud, not angry, just done. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady, though my heart pounded, "but I can't accept this." The room went still. Samantha's smile faltered. "I can't," I continued, "because money can't fix what's broken between us." A murmur spread through the guests. Someone gasped. My mother stiffened. Samantha laughed sharp and brittle. "Oh, come on, Grace. Don't be dramatic. It's a gift." I handed the microphone back. "Some gifts," I said quietly, "come with strings too tight to breathe." For a second, no one moved. Then my father's voice cut through the silence. "Grace, enough." But it was already too late. Samantha's face changed the tilt of her chin, the glint in her eyes turning from sparkle to steel. "You always find a way to ruin my moments," she hissed low enough that only I could hear. "Do you know how small you look right now?" I met her gaze. "Not as small as someone who needs an audience to feel loved." Her smile froze, beautiful and venomous. Around us, the band faltered. Cameras shifted. I stepped back, ready to leave the stage, but her hand caught my wrist, tight, shaking. "Don't you dare walk away from me," she whispered. For an instant, the entire room seemed to tilt like the air before a storm. My mother rose halfway from her seat, unsure which daughter to control first. I saw it then. This was never about generosity. It was performance punishment dressed as love. And for the first time, I refused to play my part. I pulled my hand free and walked away, my heels echoing like gunshots against the marble. Behind me, I heard a glass break sharp as a threat. Laughter turned to whispers. Someone said, "Is she serious?" I didn't turn around. Outside, the night was warm and the cicadas screamed in the trees. From the ballroom through the open doors, I heard my mother's voice rise, sweet and panicked, trying to spin the moment into something polite. I didn't care. The wedding lights glimmered over the water, fragile as everything that family pretended to be. And deep down, I knew it wasn't over. The gift had been refused, but the real price hadn't yet been paid. The morning after the wedding, Charleston woke soft and gold, but the Anderson house carried the silence of something broken. I sat in my childhood bedroom, still smelling faintly of antiseptic from the hospital, watching sunlight stretch across the white walls that had witnessed too many apologies that never meant anything. Downstairs, I could hear my mother's voice, low and urgent, the same tone she used when she wanted the world to believe nothing was wrong. "We'll say it was stress," she murmured. Too much champagne, too many emotions. My father's voice followed clipped and measured. We have donors to think about Elaine, and the press. The last thing we need is another scandal. Another. The word lingered like a stain. Our family had always been a brand before it was a home. Samantha's breakdowns, Richard's cover-ups, Elaine's polished lies, all wrapped neatly in Southern charm. I knew the rhythm by heart. My family had a script, and every scene had already been rehearsed. Samantha cried. My parents forgave. I stayed quiet. That was how love worked here. Silence bought peace. I remembered being 12 watching Samantha scream because she'd failed a piano competition. Dad had pulled her into his arms, whispering, "She's just sensitive." When I won a science award that same week, he smiled distantly and said, "Don't brag, Grace. It's unkind." At 16, when Samantha crashed Mom's car after sneaking out, I lied to the police for her because Mom said, "You're the responsible one. You can handle this." I handled everything, her messes, their disappointment, the weight of being the easy child. And every time I did, the silence between us grew heavier, like dust that never got cleaned. My parents' version of love wasn't about care, it was about control wrapped in politeness. Richard believed reputation was legacy, and Elaine treated emotions like chores done quietly, never in public. Samantha had always been the exception to every rule. When she screamed, she was passionate. When she lied, she was misunderstood. When she hurt someone, she was unwell. And me, I was stable, strong, convenient. The daughter who cleaned up bloodstains before the neighbors noticed. I could still hear my mother's words from the night before. She didn't mean it. "Grace, you provoked her. You know how she gets." That phrase, "you know how she gets," had been the family's shield for 20 years. It excused everything. Her cruelty, her tantrums, her violence. It erased me. When I tried once years ago to tell Mom that Sam's rage scared me, she smiled gently, patting my hand. "You're just too sensitive, darling. Try to be patient with her." The irony still burned. Patience had been the family's religion, and I was their priest. They sacrificed my peace on its altar over and over again. I walked down the staircase slowly, every step creaking under the weight of memories. The house was immaculate as always, the lemon scent of polish, the cold perfection of a home designed to impress strangers. My father sat in his armchair reading the paper like he wasn't the man who had watched one daughter attack another. My mother arranged flowers in a vase, her hands trembling only slightly. Samantha wasn't there. "How's your shoulder?" my father asked without looking up. His voice was businesslike, as if he were checking the stock market. "Sore," I said. He nodded once. "Let's not discuss last night again." "It's over." I stared at him. "Over?" He finally looked at me, eyes sharp behind gold-rimmed glasses. "Grace, you embarrassed your sister. You embarrassed this family. She was under tremendous pressure. You could have been gracious." "Gracious," I repeated. "She attacked me." "You rejected her gift," my mother cut in softly. "In front of everyone. That was cruel, darling. You know how fragile she is. She could have killed me." My voice cracked more from disbelief than anger. "And you're worried about her feelings. Watch your tone," my father warned. His hand gripped the armrest like restraint was a chore. "We don't shout in this house." That line, his favorite, had silenced me since I was 6. We don't shout. We don't cry. We don't tell the truth if it might ruin the picture. I laughed, a brittle sound that startled even me. "You mean we don't feel in this house?" My mother frowned as if emotions were profanity. "Grace, please. You're upset. You need rest. We'll handle Sam." "Like you always do?" I asked, with excuses and banana bread. Her lips parted, but no sound came. For a moment, I saw the truth flicker in her eyes. Fear not for me, but for the family name. The Andersons couldn't afford a scandal. A bruised daughter was easier to hide than a guilty one. I turned toward the door. "Where are you going?" my father asked. "Out," I said. "And if anyone asks about what happened, I'll tell them the truth." His paper crumpled in his fist. "You'll regret that." I looked at him and smiled faintly. "No, Dad. You will." As I stepped outside, the warm air hit my face. The estate looked exactly the same. Roses trimmed fountain glistening perfection everywhere, but I could feel something shift inside me. The script had ended, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to follow it. The wedding had been planned for 9 months, but in our family it felt like a lifetime. Every Sunday dinner turned into a board meeting about flowers menus and image. This is our legacy event, my father had said more than once, meaning it was an investment in the Anderson name. He wasn't talking about love or marriage. He was talking about how the Charleston Chronicle would cover it. I remember the morning of the ceremony, the humidity pressing through the open windows, the scent of salt from the harbor mixing with perfume and hairspray. Samantha stood before the mirror in her bridal suite, her reflection glowing under the vanity bulbs. "Don't you think it's poetic?" she asked me, her tone teasing. Me getting married here in the house that made us? I had wanted to say, "It made you not us," but I only smiled faintly. "It's beautiful," I said, and it was. The estate shimmered with the kind of wealth that hides rot under polish. The marble staircase glistened chandeliers humming with light, every petal and ribbon screaming money. Samantha turned to me holding her veil. "You're not wearing the dress I picked," she said, a small tremor of irritation breaking her calm. "I wanted us to match a little sisters, you know?" "I went with navy," I said. "It felt more me." "It feels like rebellion," she murmured, pinning the veil into her hair. "Don't do that today." Her voice was sharp like a warning. I had spent my whole life learning how to shrink under that tone. But that morning, something in me refused. "I'm not doing anything," I said simply. She glanced at me through the mirror, eyes narrowing. "You always make it about you, Grace." I almost laughed. That was her favorite trick, accusing me of the very thing she did best. When she walked down the aisle later that afternoon, the guests gasped as if royalty had appeared. Her gown shimmered like frost, her smile flawless, her hand clutching her new husband's like a trophy. The crowd rose. Cameras clicked. I watched from the second row, my heart heavy with a feeling I couldn't name. Pride, maybe. Sadness, definitely. And something darker foreboding. The band played a soft waltz as the evening settled. Waiters glided between tables carrying champagne and laughter. My parents floated through the room like practiced diplomats. My mother's smile could stop rumors mid-sentence. My father's handshake could buy silence. When Samantha raised her glass for the first toast, her eyes sought mine across the room. To family, she said, her voice syrupy and slow. "The people who always know what's best for you, even when you don't." Everyone clinked glasses, not realizing it wasn't a toast, but a threat. My mother leaned in toward me, her hand cold against mine. "Grace," she whispered, "please behave tonight. She's fragile, and we can't have another of her moods. If she offers you something, just accept it. Smile, say thank you. Even if it's poison," I asked before I could stop myself. My mother blinked the faintest flinch of panic behind her calm. "Don't be cruel." "Cruel," I whispered. "You mean honest." She pulled back, her lips tightening. "You always take things so personally." Then she stood fixing her pearl necklace and drifted away like smoke. I watched her go, realizing that in this family, compassion was conditional. The band changed tempo. Samantha's laughter rang across the ballroom, bright and false. She danced with her new husband beneath the chandelier, while the crowd circled them clapping to the rhythm of pretense. But her eyes kept flicking toward me, quick, sharp glances that carried more warning than joy. I sipped my champagne, the bubbles stinging my lip. The air felt too sweet, too staged, like a photo about to catch fire. Behind the cake table, I noticed the gleam of a knife, the silver handle catching the light reflecting gold and white. The image seared into my mind without reason. My heart ticked faster. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was experience. I knew that when Samantha smiled too wide, something dangerous always followed. Then came the MC's voice through the microphone. "And now the bride has one more surprise for us all." The crowd cheered. Samantha's laughter spilled out, delicate and deliberate. "I promise," she said, "this one will be unforgettable." My stomach turned, though I didn't yet know why. I didn't realize the knife wasn't the only thing gleaming that night. There was a frame covered with a velvet cloth waiting by the stage, and inside it something worth $2 million and a lifetime of resentment. I glanced toward my mother. She gave me the same warning look she always did before disaster, a smile that said, "Be quiet." The music softened, the lights dimmed, and somewhere deep down I already knew the next few minutes would ruin us all. The ballroom lights dimmed, and for a moment everyone held their breath. Samantha's voice echoed across the marble, soft and trembling with practiced emotion. "Before the night ends, I want to do something special," she said. "For my sister." A spotlight cut through the crowd, landing on me. I froze mid-sip, every eye turning. "Grace, come join me," she called, her smile stretching too wide. The guests clapped, thinking it was just another toast. My stomach twisted. I walked toward the stage, my heels clicking against the floor, echoing louder than the music. Samantha stood beside a velvet-covered easel. "You've always been my biggest supporter," she said into the mic, her tone dripping sweetness. "Even when we fought, you were my anchor, my sanity. So tonight I want to give something back." She snapped her fingers and the cloth dropped. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A framed check for $2 million gleamed under the chandelier light. Cameras flashed. Someone whistled. My father's smile froze perfectly politician-like. My mother covered her mouth in a mock gasp. Samantha turned to me, basking in the attention. "You deserve this, Grace. You've always worked so hard for so little. Now you can take a break from saving lives or whatever it is you do." Laughter rippled through the room. My heart pounded. The words stung more than I expected. The way she said saving lives, as if it were trivial, as if everything I'd ever done was beneath her charity. She held the check toward me, waiting. I stared at it, at her perfect French manicured hand, at the cameras circling like vultures. My throat tightened. "I can't accept this," I said softly. The laughter faded. "What?" Samantha blinked. "I said I can't take it." The silence deepened. The guests shifted uneasily. My mother's face went pale. My father mouthed something, "Don't," but I didn't stop. "Sam," I said, my voice steady now, "you don't give gifts to erase what you've done." The words hung in the air like smoke. Her expression cracked. "Excuse me, this isn't generosity." I continued, "It's theater. You don't get to humiliate me with kindness in front of everyone and call it love." A collective inhale swept through the hall. My mother stood whispering, "Grace, stop this." Samantha laughed sharp and false. "You always were jealous," she said, stepping closer. "Always had to make everything about you. You couldn't even let me have one day, could you?" I shook my head. "I don't want your money, Sam." "Then what do you want?" she hissed. "To be the victim, to make me look like a monster." "You don't need my help with that," I said quietly. Her eyes widened, glinting under the chandelier. She moved closer, close enough that I could smell the champagne on her breath. "Say that again," she whispered. "Say it." "You heard me." Her hand trembled around the microphone. Then before I could step back, she threw the champagne in my face. The room gasped. Cold liquid stung my eyes, soaked my dress. I blinked through the blur just in time to see her grab the silver cake knife. Samantha, my mother, cried, but she didn't move. No one did. The air froze. I barely had time to raise my arm before the first strike came, a flash of silver, a rush of pain as the blade sliced my shoulder. I stumbled backward, the room spinning. Someone screamed. The second strike missed, glancing off my arm. The crowd erupted, chairs, scraping glasses, shattering. My father lunged forward too late. The knife clattered to the floor. My knees gave out the marble cold against my palms. The world tilted sideways, faces blurring, music cutting off mid-beat. I heard Samantha sobbing somewhere above me, her voice shrill and breaking. "She ruined everything. She always ruins everything." And then my mother's voice trembling but controlled. "Sam, baby, calm down. It's okay. It's okay." I tried to lift my head, blood dripping down my arm. My mother was holding her, my attacker, my sister stroking her hair while I bled on the floor. "Don't call anyone," my father hissed to a waiter. "We'll handle this." but a voice cut through his. "I'm calling!" Someone shouted. It was a waiter. Young, terrified, holding his phone to his ear. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was Samantha collapsing into our mother's arms, sobbing, and my mother whispering the same line she'd used my whole life. She didn't mean it. My cheek pressed against the marble, the cold creeping into my skin. The chandelier lights blurred into stars above me. Somewhere, distant sirens began to wail sharp and rising, and the smell of blood mixed with roses and vanilla frosting. And as the sound grew closer, one thought crystallized in my mind, clearer than pain or fear or disbelief. This time, I wasn't going to let them make me disappear. When I came to the world was sterile and humming. The first thing I saw was the ceiling light harsh and humming above me like judgment. My arm was bound tight in gauze. My shoulder throbbed in rhythm with the monitor beside me. The faint scent of roses still clung to my hair. For a moment, I thought it was the wedding again, that someone would laugh and tell me it was just a bad dream. But then I heard my mother's voice, soft, trembling, unmistakable. She didn't mean it. I turned my head, wincing at the pull in my neck. She was sitting in the hospital hallway, just beyond the curtain, holding Samantha's hand. My sister was dressed in the same white gown now cleaned, and pressed her hair pinned back like nothing had happened. Her eyes were red, but not from guilt, from self-pity. My father stood beside them, speaking in low tones to a police officer. "It was a misunderstanding," he said. "My daughter's emotional." The other one just startled her. "You know how weddings can get." The officer's expression was unreadable. He scribbled something down and walked away. My father sighed, relieved, as if he'd just negotiated a business deal. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. A nurse drew back the curtain. "You're awake," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" I tried to answer, but my voice broke. "Can I have some water?" She nodded and poured a cup, helping me lift my good arm. The water was cold grounding. "Your family's outside," she said carefully. "Would you like me to let them in?" My chest tightened. "No," I whispered. "Please don't." She hesitated, then nodded as if she understood. When she left, I closed my eyes and listened to the voices in the hall. My mother's cooing, my father's measured tone, Samantha's sniffles. It was the same old scene, just with a new backdrop. I had been hurt before, but never like this, and they still found a way to make her the victim. "Sam, sweetheart," my mother said, her voice trembling. "You didn't mean to. It was just the stress. You're not a bad person." "She humiliated me," Samantha sobbed. "In front of everyone." I know, my mother soothed. "And she'll apologize once she's calmer. She always does." The words sliced through me sharper than the knife had. I could see them through the narrow gap in the curtain, my mother's arms wrapped around the daughter who'd almost killed me. My father placing his hand on Sam's shoulder, telling her to keep her head down until the gossip died. I lay there invisible again. The nurse returned to check my vitals. She paused, catching sight of the scene outside. Her face hardened. "You'd be surprised," she said quietly, "how many people we see here hurt by the ones they love and still left alone." Her words were gentle, but they lodged in my chest like a blade of truth. When she left again, I stared at the pale blue curtain between us. Just a thin layer of fabric separating the victim from the family that refused to see her. Eventually, they came in anyway. My mother first. Her makeup was flawless, her eyes rehearsed. "Grace," she said softly, "we need to get ahead of this before it spreads." I stared at her, unable to believe it. Ahead of what? The story. The media already called. Someone leaked footage. "We'll say it was an accident." "It wasn't an accident." "Sweetheart, please," she whispered, glancing toward the hall. "Sam's fragile. You don't understand what she's been through." I laughed hoarse, bitter. "She almost killed me." My father stepped forward. "That's enough, Grace. Don't make this worse." My pulse spiked, the monitor beside me beeping faster. "Worse," I whispered. "She stabbed me, and you're worried about how it looks." "Watch your tone," he said, his voice low, familiar. "We're your parents." I looked between them, their calm, their calculation, and something inside me went cold. "Not anymore," I said. My mother gasped softly, like the word itself was violence. My father's face darkened. "You'll regret that." Maybe, but in that moment, I didn't care. Because for the first time in 32 years, I wasn't the one apologizing for bleeding. The hospital became my world for 3 long days. The walls hummed with the steady rhythm of machines, the kind that never sleep. The nurses rotated like ghosts in pastel scrubs, kind but distant. They called me Miss Anderson with gentle smiles, not knowing that the name itself felt poisoned. The Charleston Chronicle ran a small headline on Day 2 minor incident at high society wedding. Family requests. Privacy. Minor. I stared at that word until the letters blurred. My shoulder had 6 stitches, my ribs ached every time I breathed, and my arm was bound in a sling. But the pain that stayed wasn't in my body, it was in the silence that followed. My phone lay on the table beside my bed. No missed calls, no messages, not even a voicemail. Not from my parents, not from Samantha. I turned it over and over in my hand like it might suddenly vibrate, prove I was wrong. It never did. On the third evening, just as the sky outside dimmed into rose and gray, the door opened quietly. "You look like hell," said a voice I hadn't realized I'd missed. Dr. Leah Torres, my coworker and one of the few people who had ever looked past the Anderson last name. Her hair was pulled back messily, her scrubs wrinkled her eyes sharp with concern. She set a paper cup of coffee on my tray. "No flowers? No visitors?" she asked, scanning the empty room. I forced a smile. "Only the press." She gave a low whistle. "That bad," I nodded. "They called it an incident." "They always do," she murmured. She glanced at my arm, the bruising along my collarbone. She did this. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Leah sighed, the kind of sigh that carries both anger and pity. "You know this isn't going away, right? The footage is already out there. Someone leaked it. People are talking." My stomach tightened. "Leaked?" "It's on social media. Everyone's pretending they don't know which family it is, but Charleston isn't that big." She paused, her voice softening. "You didn't deserve this." The words hit harder than I expected. I blinked away tears, embarrassed by them. "They'll spin it," I said quietly. "They always do." "Then stop letting them," she said. "You're not powerless, Grace." I looked at her, but she didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. When she left, I stared at the wall for a long time, thinking about that word, powerless. My family had trained me to be exactly that. Silence was their currency, and I'd been paying it all my life. My phone buzzed at last, and my heart jumped before I saw the name Mom. The message was short. "Please don't talk to anyone. Sam's not well. Don't make this worse." I almost laughed. Even her apology was an accusation. "Don't make this worse." I typed out a reply and deleted it 3 times before finally writing, "I'm alive." That's what's worse to you, isn't it? But I didn't send it. Not yet. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. My face was swollen, my eyes shadowed. I barely recognized myself. I wondered if Samantha had cried that night, or if she'd slept soundly knowing the script would protect her again. I imagined my parents comforting her, baking her favorite lemon cake, telling her how hard life must be for someone so sensitive. I imagined them toasting to forgiveness while my name was quietly erased from their dinner table. The nurse came in for vitals. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" she asked kindly. I hesitated. "No," I said, "but I will be." She smiled softly like she'd heard that before from someone else who had learned to survive family. That night, I wrote in the hospital notepad. Just a few sentences. I didn't know if it was a diary entry or a declaration. I'm done keeping their peace. I'm done protecting the ones who hurt me. This time they will see me bleed and they will remember it. I tore the page out and folded it into my pocket. The machines kept beeping steady and constant as if they agreed. When the nurse came for the night shift, she turned off the lights. "Get some rest, Miss Anderson." But I didn't sleep. I watched the city lights shimmer on the water beyond the window, and I promised myself something I'd never dared before. The next time they saw me, I wouldn't be the quiet one. I would be the storm. The morning after I was discharged, Charleston shimmered under a heavy sky, the kind that looked calm but promised a storm. I sat on the edge of my bed, arm in a sling hospital wristband still tight against my skin. My phone lay silent beside me. No one from my family had come, not even a driver. Only Leah, who had shown up at dawn with coffee and that look she wore when she knew I was about to do something irreversible. "You're not going back there," she said, setting the cup down. "Not after this." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I knew she was right, but part of me still needed proof that what happened wasn't another scene they'd rewrite into something forgivable. So I opened my laptop and searched the one person who might have it, the wedding photographer. His name was Drew Maxwell, a freelancer Samantha had hired for the publicity spread. His portfolio showed smiling brides' champagne chandeliers. But tucked between the albums was a headline, "Anderson Wedding Footage Sparks Questions." My pulse quickened. I clicked the link. There it was, a 14-second clip, grainy but real. Samantha's voice trembling with fury. The flash of silver, the scream, the chaos. It wasn't the full attack, but it was enough to show intent, enough to show the truth. Comments flooded the page. Was that the Anderson family looks staged? That poor woman. I closed the laptop slowly, my hands shaking. Leah's voice broke the silence. "You know this isn't going away." "Good," I said. "I don't want it to." That afternoon, she introduced me to a lawyer, Evelyn Ross. I'd heard her name whispered in hospital hallways before, always followed by words like ruthless and precise. She arrived in a navy suit, her hair pulled into a severe knot, eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. "Ms. Anderson," she said, shaking my hand firmly. I watched the clip. "You have a case?" "A case," I asked. "For what?" "They'll bury it. They always do." Evelyn's expression didn't change. "Not if we move first. You have assault, defamation, and emotional distress. You also have a paper trail." "Paper trail." "Text messages, that recording from your mother, your medical report, the video. It's more than most victims ever get." She leaned forward. "They'll try to spin it as a mental breakdown. They'll say you provoked her. They'll buy sympathy. But we won't let them." For a moment, I just stared at her. All my life, I'd been told not to make trouble, not to embarrass the family, not to air our dirty laundry. But Evelyn's calm certainty made it sound like truth could be armor, not shame. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I exhaled slowly. "I want them to feel the consequences." The next hours blurred into motion. Evelyn took photos of my injuries, collected the ER report, and backed up the leaked footage before it disappeared. She had me forward every message from my mother and Samantha, every voicemail, pretending nothing had happened. She listened, typing quietly as I described the night of the wedding. "We'll file for a restraining order first," she said. "Then civil action. They'll try to settle, don't. You have leverage now. You control the narrative." Leah stayed by my side through it all, a silent pillar. When I faltered, she reminded me, "Grace, this isn't revenge. It's survival." Still, it felt like treason. Turning on your own blood, even when they'd already drawn it. That night, I opened my email and reread the message my mother had sent from the hospital. "Don't make this worse." Then I hit forward and sent it to Evelyn with a single line, "Make it worse for them." By the next morning, she'd drafted the filings. When I read the first line, Plaintiff Grace Anderson versus Samantha Anderson et al., I felt something break loose inside me. Fear, yes. But also relief. The case cited assault with intent, coercive control, and ongoing emotional abuse. It referenced my medical injuries, the leaked footage, and the pattern of family gaslighting documented in years of correspondence. Evelyn included a demand, $3 million in damages, and a public apology. I told her I didn't care about the money. She said that wasn't the point. "Money is what they respect," she explained. "It's the only language they speak." When the documents were filed, I expected guilt to crash over me. Instead, there was quiet, an eerie kind of stillness that felt like peace. I stood by the window of Leah's apartment, watching thunderclouds roll across the bay. Somewhere out there, my parents were panicking. Samantha was rehearsing her tears, and the Anderson name was bleeding in public for the first time. I pressed my palm to the glass, the stormlight flickering against my bandages. "They'll hate me for this," I whispered. Leah's reflection appeared beside mine. "They already do," she said gently. Now they'll just have to do it out loud. The first crack of thunder shook the sky. I didn't flinch, because for once the noise belonged to me. The video hit the internet like a match to gasoline. By the second morning, every Charleston gossip blog, wedding forum, and social media feed carried it the gleam of the cake knife, my scream, the flash of white fabric, the blood. Someone had captioned it, "Bride snaps after sister refuses 2 mm gift." Within hours, the clip reached 1 million views. Hashtags multiplied. My phone buzzed non-stop with calls from numbers I didn't know. Some journalists wanted statements, others wanted scandal. I didn't give them either. I let the footage speak for itself. The Anderson family name, once synonymous with charm and influence, began to fracture. My father's company issued a terse press release calling it a family misunderstanding. My mother posted a photo of white lilies on her social media page with the caption, "Healing takes grace." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. By the end of the day, the Chronicle published a front-page story, "Charleston heiress faces assault allegations after wedding attack." They used the still image of my blood on the marble floor. Beneath it, a single line, "The victim, Grace Anderson, has filed charges." The article detonated everything. My parents' phones were flooded. Their friends canceled luncheons. The board of Richard's firm held an emergency meeting. The family group chat, silent for years, lit up with frantic messages. "You've gone too far, Grace. Take it down before you destroy us." But I didn't reply. That evening, Evelyn arrived at Leah's apartment, tablet in hand. "It's spreading faster than we expected," she said, "which means they'll move to contain it." "Let them," I answered. "They built the lie. Now let it collapse." Evelyn's smile was small approving. "Good, because we're not done." The next day, she released a statement to the press. "My client, Grace Anderson, was assaulted in a public venue. We have video medical evidence and witness testimony. Any attempt to discredit her will be met with legal action." The effect was immediate. The narrative shifted. People who had doubted began to believe. Comment sections filled with strangers defending me, recounting their own families, their own Sams. Others called me a liar, attention seeker, opportunist. I stopped reading after the first 100 comments. Truth didn't need to convince everyone, it just needed to exist. Samantha predictably went on the defensive. 2 days later, she appeared on a live stream wrapped in a pale sweater, her makeup smudged artfully to suggest sleeplessness. "I'm getting treatment," she said tearfully. "I never meant to hurt my sister. I'm struggling with anxiety, and this has been blown out of proportion. Please respect our privacy." The performance was flawless. My mother commented 3 heart emojis beneath it. My father shared it with the caption, "Family above all." For a few hours, sympathy poured back their way, until someone, an anonymous waiter, posted the second video. It was longer, clearer, taken from behind the dessert table. It showed everything. Samantha's smirk the moment she grabbed the knife, my fall, my mother rushing to cradle her instead of me. The caption read simply, "I worked that night. This is the truth." The internet erupted. The hashtags flipped. #justice for Grace trended across platforms. People slowed the video frame by frame, analyzing body language, words, glances. Experts on talk shows debated emotional abuse in wealthy families. Overnight, the Andersons became a case study in hypocrisy. Evelyn's phone buzzed non-stop. "They'll reach out soon," she said. "They'll want to settle quietly." And they did. The next morning, my father showed up at her office. He looked older, smaller, his confidence cracked. "We can end this," he said. "It doesn't have to go further." Evelyn folded her hands. "It will go exactly as far as it needs to." He sighed, leaning forward. "Grace's family. Surely we can handle this privately." I was sitting behind her desk, silent until then. "You handled it privately my whole life," I said. "And look what that did." He blinked as if seeing me for the first time in years. "You've changed." I stopped apologizing. He started to speak again, but Evelyn cut him off. "The terms are simple. Samantha pleads guilty, publicly. You issue a statement accepting responsibility, and you pay damages." His jaw tightened. "You're ruining your own bloodline." "No," I said quietly. "I'm cleaning it." He left without another word. That night, Leah and I sat on her couch watching the evening news. They showed the video again this time, blurred with the anchor saying my name carefully. Sources confirm that Grace Anderson's legal team has filed both criminal and civil suits citing a history of coercion and cover-up. I watched my family's empire unravel on screen, piece by piece. The company stock dipped. Charities pulled their sponsorships. Invitations disappeared. For once, the silence didn't belong to me, it belonged to them. At midnight, my phone buzzed, a new message. Sam, you don't understand what you're doing. Please stop before this destroys me. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back. You destroyed me first. I didn't hit send. I deleted the thread instead. Some things didn't deserve a reply. The following morning, Evelyn called. The district attorney's office just confirmed they're opening a formal case. We'll go to court. I looked out the window at the Charleston skyline half hidden behind mist. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed the hour. I imagined Samantha waking in her penthouse, realizing for the first time that her name no longer protected her. I imagined my mother pacing desperate to spin a story that wouldn't stick. I imagined my father staring at his reflection, wondering which version of himself the world would believe. Leah poured me coffee and sat beside me. You okay? I'm not sure I said, but I think this is what freedom feels like. Freedom always feels wrong at first, she said softly. Especially when you've been trained to call it betrayal. Outside, the rain finally started soft cleansing. It hit the window like applause, quiet but certain. That night before I went to sleep, I opened my email. There were dozens of new messages from strangers, women from Florida, Ohio, Maine. They wrote about sisters, mothers, husbands. They wrote about secrets, silent survival. One line stayed with me, thank you for showing that even rich people's prisons have keys. I lay back, listening to the storm fade. Somewhere out there, my family was learning that truth doesn't ask for permission. It just waits patient and unstoppable until someone finally says it out loud. And this time, that someone was me. The courthouse smelled of rain and paper. Reporters lined the marble steps, cameras flashing like lightning against the gray Charleston sky. I walked between Evelyn and Leah, my sling finally gone, but the scar on my shoulder still tender beneath my blouse. The air buzzed with whispers. Anderson family scandal betrayal. I kept my chin high. For once, they were whispering about what actually happened. Inside the courtroom was colder than I expected. The judge, a silver-haired woman named Harrington, regarded us over rimless glasses. Case number 5241. Anderson versus Anderson, she announced. Her voice filled the room like thunder. Samantha sat at the defendant's table, immaculate as ever. Her blonde hair was pulled into a neat bun, her pearl earrings catching the light. Beside her, my parents sat like loyal guards, my mother pale and trembling, my father rigid and unreadable. When Samantha's eyes met mine, she didn't look remorseful. She looked terrified. That was new. The prosecution began with the video, the same one the internet had dissected frame by frame. As the footage flickered onto the screen, the room went silent. You could hear every breath, every gasp, the clatter of the knife, my scream, echoing against the ballroom's marble. Even though I'd seen it before, it still felt like a stranger watching herself die a little. When the clip ended, the prosecutor turned to the judge. Your Honor, this was not an accident. This was an attack premeditated by humiliation and fueled by control. Samantha's lawyer objected. My client was suffering from emotional instability. Judge Harrington raised a hand. I've seen instability. This is rage. Evelyn's voice followed calm and deliberate. The defendant has a documented history of aggression toward the plaintiff. We've submitted 27 pieces of evidence, text messages, voicemails, financial coercion, medical reports, and witness statements. She pressed play on a recording. My mother's voice filled the courtroom sweet and lethal. Please don't make this worse, Grace. Sam isn't well. The room rippled with quiet shock. My mother's hand flew to her mouth as if she could pull the words back into her throat. Then Evelyn called the next witness, Mrs. Bennett, our neighbor, the woman who had called the ambulance that night. I saw it all, she said firmly. That girl was lying on the floor bleeding. Her parents were upstairs holding the one who did it. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother began to cry. Samantha's jaw clenched. When it was my turn, my knees shook as I walked to the stand. Evelyn didn't speak. She just nodded as if to say, you have the floor. I looked straight ahead. I loved my sister, I said. All my life I tried to protect her. I thought that was love. But what happened at that wedding wasn't a breakdown, it was a choice. a choice my parents excused because pretending was easier than facing the truth. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because silence almost killed me, and if I don't speak now, it might kill someone else next time. The courtroom was silent. Even the cameras outside had stopped clicking. When I stepped down, Samantha refused to meet my eyes. Her lawyer called her to testify, but her voice trembled when she spoke. I don't remember everything she said. I was overwhelmed. Evelyn's tone was surgical. Do you remember picking up the knife? Yes. Do you remember your sister's blood on your hands? Samantha's lip quivered. I didn't mean. Intent isn't erased by tears, Ms. Anderson. The courtroom buzzed. By late afternoon, the judge returned with the verdict. After reviewing the evidence and testimony she began, this court finds the defendant Samantha Anderson guilty of felony assault resulting in bodily harm. My mother gasped. My father's hand shot to her arm. Judge Harrington continued, her voice cutting through their disbelief. The court orders restitution of $1.5 million to the plaintiff, a mandatory 18-month probation period, and a restraining order of 200 feet at all times. She paused. Miss Anderson's actions have consequences even for the well-bred. The gavel struck. The sound was clean, final, beautiful. Samantha broke down sobbing into our mother's shoulder. My father stared at me, his face carved from marble. Are you satisfied now? He hissed as I passed. I stopped. No, I said quietly, but I'm safe. Evelyn touched my elbow, guiding me toward the exit. The flash of cameras burst as we stepped into the light. Reporters shouted questions, but I didn't answer. The truth didn't need defending anymore. It had been recorded, judged, sealed. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets glistened clean and new. Evelyn looked at me, a rare softness in her voice. You did it. I shook my head. We did it. Leah was waiting at the bottom of the courthouse steps, holding an umbrella and 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one, smiling through tears. How does it feel? I looked up at the courthouse, its pillars towering and solemn against the gray sky. Like the world's finally listening, I said, and for once I'm not whispering. That night, as I sat by my window, the city lights shimmered on the bay. Somewhere in another house, my family was unraveling the story to make it sound gentler. But it didn't matter anymore. The law had spoken. The silence was broken, and I was done being the quiet one. The weeks after the verdict felt like breathing for the first time through scar tissue. The world didn't suddenly become fair, but it became honest, and that was enough. Samantha disappeared from public view. Her PR firm issued one final statement about family healing before her social media accounts vanished. My parents retreated to their beach house on Sullivan's Island, where the neighbors said they no longer attended church or hosted their famous charity luncheons. The Anderson name was still on plaques and hospital wings, but in Charleston, people whispered it now instead of admiring it. I returned to work at the hospital after 6 weeks. The first day back, the halls smelled of disinfectant and hope, the strange mixture that had always made me feel grounded. Nurses hugged me. Patients I'd treated before the wedding left small cards on my desk. Someone taped a handwritten note to my locker. You didn't just save lives, you saved yourself. But recovery wasn't romantic. It came in quiet ways, the stiffness in my shoulder every morning, the flash of white whenever someone dropped a metal tray, the way my heart still raced when I saw a blonde woman from behind. Leah checked on me daily, her humor anchoring me when I drifted. You realize you're officially famous, right? She said, once scrolling through her phone. They're calling you the quiet survivor. I smiled faintly. Quiet, huh? They clearly haven't seen me in court. True, she said, grinning. That was the opposite of quiet. That was biblical. Evelyn called a week later. We've finalized the restitution, she said. The court transferred the funds this morning. $1.5 million less legal fees. Money! The word felt surreal, almost irrelevant. After a lifetime of being controlled by it, I didn't want it to define the ending. What do I even do with it, I asked. Her voice softened for the first time since I'd met her. Whatever makes you feel free. I thought about it for a long time. About what freedom really meant after a life spent obeying other people's rules. A month later, I stood outside the Anderson estate for the last time. The marble pillars gleamed under the afternoon sun, immaculate as ever. I'd come to collect a few personal things, a box of childhood photos, my grandmother's quilt, an old diary I'd hidden in the attic. The staff pretended not to know me. My mother didn't come downstairs. Only my father met me at the door, his expression carved in stone. "You've destroyed us," he said quietly. "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "You destroyed us the day you taught us that appearances mattered more than truth." He didn't answer, just stepped aside, letting me pass. The silence between us was heavier than any insult. Upstairs, my old bedroom looked frozen in time. The white furniture, the trophies, the framed family photos all arranged like a museum exhibit of someone else's life. I packed what mattered into a single box. As I turned to leave, my reflection caught in the mirror. The same face, but sharper. A woman instead of a ghost. Before I left, I took one last look at the window where I'd once spent nights wishing to be heard. I whispered a simple goodbye not to the house, but to the version of myself that had lived in its shadow. Outside, the air was lighter. I drove away with the windows down, the wind tugging at my hair. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, I used part of the settlement to create something new, a small foundation for victims of domestic and family abuse. We called it the Quiet Ones. Leah helped with the paperwork, and Evelyn donated her time as legal counsel. Within months, we had our first funded case, a woman in Savannah trying to escape her controlling husband. When I read her letter, my chest ached in recognition. The details were different, but the silence was the same. At the launch event, I stood behind the microphone in a modest community center, not a ballroom. The audience wasn't wearing silk or pearls. They were teachers, nurses, single mothers, retirees. Real people. My people now. "My name is Grace Anderson," I began. "For most of my life, I was told to stay quiet for the sake of peace. But silence doesn't keep the peace, it keeps the pain. I built this foundation so no one else has to choose between truth and belonging. Because belonging built on fear isn't family, it's captivity." When I finished, the room was quiet for a heartbeat. Then the applause began slow, then thunderous. I felt the sound wash over me, not like noise, but like light. After the event, an older woman approached me. She wore a faded denim jacket and smelled faintly of lavender. "I watched your story on the news," she said. "I lost my sister to something like that years ago. Thank you for not letting them bury yours." Her words caught me off guard. "I didn't save her," I said softly. "No," she said. "You saved yourself, that's how the cycle ends." That night, I drove to the edge of Charleston Harbor. The water shimmered beneath the moon, endless and forgiving. I stood barefoot on the dock, the wind tugging at the hem of my coat. The city behind me was the same, but I wasn't. For the first time, I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. Freedom wasn't loud. It was the absence of needing to explain yourself to people who'd already decided not to listen. I closed my eyes and whispered, "This is mine now." The sound of the waves answered softly, carrying the past out to sea. The first morning of my new life didn't begin with noise. It began with sunlight. Real, unfiltered light spilling through the sheer curtains of my new apartment in Savannah. A city far enough from Charleston to feel like freedom, close enough to remember who I used to be. I made coffee, the smell filling the small kitchen, and watched seagulls drift past the window. The peace was so still, it almost frightened me. There were no calls from my mother, no emails from attorneys, no articles dissecting my pain. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized something I'd never known before: silence, when it belongs to you, is not emptiness. It's power. Leah visited that weekend, her laughter echoing through the apartment as she unpacked takeout containers. "I can't believe you actually left Charleston," she said, shaking her head. "I half expected you to buy the mansion and turn it into a trauma recovery center." I smiled. "Too many ghosts. Besides, I like the view here better." She leaned against the counter, studying me. "You look different, you know. Lighter." "I feel different," I said, like I finally stopped fighting gravity. Later that evening, we walked along the riverfront where street musicians played slow jazz and the air smelled of salt and magnolia. The city was alive, but gently, so a kind of life that didn't demand performance. For once, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place in it. As the sun dipped low, Leah turned to me. "Do you ever miss them?" I thought about the question for a long time. My parents, Samantha, the house with the lemon polish smell, the portrait-lined hallways. Sometimes I admitted. But I think I miss the idea of them more than the people they really were. Leah nodded. "That's grief, not regret. They're different." She was right. Grief still came in quiet waves. It arrived when I heard a song we used to play during Christmas or when I smelled my mother's favorite perfume at the grocery store. But the grief no longer drowned me. It just reminded me that I'd survived. A few months later, the Quiet Ones Foundation had grown faster than any of us expected. We had 5 volunteers, 2 attorneys, and a partnership with a shelter network. I spent my mornings helping file petitions, my afternoons speaking at small community events, and my evenings walking home through the amber-lit streets. I slept deeply dreamlessly, something I hadn't done since childhood. One afternoon, Evelyn called with an update. "The Anderson case is officially closed," she said. "Samantha completed her probation and moved out west. Your parents refinanced the estate to cover the restitution. They won't bother you again." I exhaled a sound somewhere between relief and mourning. "It's strange," I said. "I thought the end would feel more dramatic." "It rarely does," she replied. "Freedom's quieter than vengeance." After we hung up, I sat by the window watching rain streak down the glass. For the first time, I didn't replay the trauma in my mind. I didn't feel the need to defend my choices. I just existed a live, scarred hole. That evening, I opened my journal, the same one I'd started after the hospital. Its pages were filled now with things I never used to write: gratitude lists, small victories recipes, names of women who'd reached out for help. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote, "Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the decision not to return to the people who caused it." The next day, I met with our newest client, a soft-spoken woman named Clara, holding her toddler in her arms. Her husband had isolated her for years, drained her savings, and convinced her she was worthless. As she told her story, her voice trembled in all the places mine used to. I listened without interruption, sliding tissues across the table when her tears came. When she finished, she looked up at me and whispered, "How did you do it? How did you stop being afraid?" I smiled gently. "I didn't stop being afraid," I said. "I just stopped letting fear make my choices." She nodded, tears still glistening in her eyes. "Do you think it ever stops hurting?" "One day," I said. "It stops hurting more than it helps." After she left, Leah came into the office holding a box of donation forms. "You know," she said, "I think this what you're doing, it's bigger than your family ever was." I glanced at the photo on the wall, our foundation's logo, a quiet ripple expanding outward. Maybe I said, but it's not about being bigger, it's about being better. That night, as I locked up, the air was cool and sweet with jasmine. I stood outside the office, the streetlights flickering softly on the pavement. The world no longer felt heavy, it just felt real. When I got home, I poured a cup of tea and stepped onto the balcony. The city hummed beneath me, a low, comforting sound. Somewhere in that hum were hundreds of women like me learning, rebuilding, daring to speak. I looked at the scar near my temple in the reflection of the glass door. Once it had felt like a mark of shame. Now it looked like punctuation proof that the story hadn't ended where they tried to silence it. I whispered into the night, "You can't rewrite me anymore." The wind carried the words away, but I knew they'd stay somewhere, maybe in the air. Maybe in someone else's courage. When I finally went to bed, I didn't dream of the wedding or the knife or the hospital. I dreamed of sunlight through magnolia leaves, of a woman laughing freely beside a river, of a life unborrowed and unbroken. In the morning, I woke to the sound of seagulls again, the light warm against my face. The world outside my window was wide and waiting, and for the first time in my 32 years, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt alive, and that was enough.